Springfield's Talk 1041. My name is Nick Reed, and welcome to the show, everyone. Pyramid Roofing Company, talk at text line 447 KSGF. Guess we can get your thoughts on the old debate last night if you'd like. You can text in, you can call in. I kind of felt watching that they probably should have had him just memorize everything like they did Kamala. It did not seem to go well for Waltz. In fact, the Federalist has an entire piece. It's the 15 top memes out of the debate, and they're all about him. One of them, it's a picture of Obama, and it says, "I need a vice president dumber than me," or something, and then it's Biden below him saying the same thing, and then Kamala below him saying the same thing. And then, of course, it's a sign, and it's Trump Vance, and then it has at the bottom with a little asterisk, "Not friends with school shooters," which it was bad for Walls.
I don't think I've ever watched somebody take so many notes in their life. I would love to see a photo of his notebook. He's like, I'm
Just
scared.
help me, help me,
Yes.
help me. Yeah,
I
you
can't
wonder,
do
like, what were
this.
you writing? Because
Right.
it didn't seem to have any payoff.
But you
As
get me?
he can't read his own writing, so he really does ramble on. He had, at least last night, and this is the thing about him, because he hasn't really been in a public forum like this. We don't have much to compare it to. I mean, he's done a couple of interviews, but they're softball interviews, and of course, given the speeches. But in terms of, okay, here you are in a forum in which you're going to have somebody challenging you, yeah, and so we really didn't know. We did not know if the Democrats out there saying that he was very nervous and worried about this and underselling him was all part of marketing, so that when he did do well, it would seem like, oh, this is amazing, because that clearly is not how it played out last night. I think there will be a discussion today about how the big losers of the night were the moderators. There was a lot of criticism that just not learning from the mistakes of ABC with the fact checking. And what I wanted to see when you're watching these things, of course, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Is when Tim Waltz is making claims that are just brazenly untrue, is for J.D. Vance to have leaned into the mic, looked at the moderators, and just said, "Are you going to fact check that?" Just throw it at them and then make them respond, to make them also, put themselves on full display, which they did on their own last night. So we'll play some of the audio. Now, Democrats are going to largely today and the next day, and they're going to just want this to go away. There will be a lot of discussion about how the presidential debates themselves don't necessarily make a huge difference. The vice presidential debates don't either. But I think in a vacuum of substance, which is what the Kamala Harris campaign is, it can make a difference in the sense that there are Americans out there that, believe it or not, they don't know for whom they're going to vote. They're on the fence. They haven't decided. And I think a lot of those people, they vote based off of emotion. And they're just waiting for a sign or something. And many of us have been in this position in our life where we have a hard time making a decision. So we just sort of wait and tell ourselves something's going to happen, in which we get a sign where we're just going to know, oh, okay, this is the path I need to take. And in fact, in life, generally, that isn't what occurs. And so I think that you have a segment of the population, and they're just waiting for this something to happen. For them, I mean, not anything necessarily monumental, but there's just going to be a feeling they get, a tug on them that goes, oh, this is the one you're supposed to vote for. And it's, that's just generally not life. But increasingly, when the Harris campaign really doesn't offer anything, every day that goes by that there are these opportunities in which those undecideds are telling themselves, okay, well, I'm going to observe this because maybe this is going to give me something, and then it doesn't. That is really a win for Trump, because there is, for a lot of those people, I think they recognize things were better under Trump. They don't like Trump, but things were better. And they're looking for something that the Harris campaign can give them to make them feel secure about turning their back on what they know about a better America, particularly a better economy, more secure border, and so forth. Give them a reason, give them an excuse. And last night just didn't, once again, there was nothing provided to those people to say, oh, okay, now I feel like I get it. I can offer up to myself this substantial reason to support Kamala and Tim Walz, and that certainly did not happen last night. So I think that this certainly, in a vacuum of reasons to vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, this did not really, I can't imagine anyone watching it going, oh, well, now I feel as if I've been given a reason to vote for Harris and Walz. And that's what they desperately need, because Trump is known. People know Trump. And oftentimes when it really comes down to flipping a coin, people go with what they know, even if they don't necessarily like that. And there is an argument to be made that oftentimes people will say, well, I just want something different. But Kamala, as much as they're trying to claim that she's something different, those people who are on the fence because she's part of the current administration are looking for something substantial that they can say, oh, okay, that is different. And they're just not being given that. And as much as, again, the media may want to claim that, of course, she's providing that, clearly, believe what you want, it's not resonating, because that's the one thing consistently you hear from people who are still up in the air about whom it is they're going to support, that, well, I still don't know what Kamala stands for. I still don't know what she's going to do. I still, don't understand what her plan is. And you can blame the undecideds all you want, but the fact of the matter is, it's the Harris campaign's job to win them over. And if there was any hope that that was going to occur last night, I think that was very quickly eliminated. Like I said, we will play some of that audio, plus the newest developments with Iran and Israel yesterday. Also, just you look at the listing of things that are going on right now with Iran, Israel, the disasters in half a dozen states due to hurricanes, and this strike that's underway, and the White House's firm position that they're not going to take a firm position. This is confusing to a lot of people. They think, well, Joe Biden, this administration is all based off of these workers. They claiming that he is the guy, that this is what's such an appeal about Lunch Pail Joe. And Kamala Harris is his partner and everything, is that these are his people. There should be no better president in the White House for this to occur during his or her time, because this is tailor-made for someone like this to swoop in and, at the very least, champion a side, but he's not doing it. And I'll tell you why they're not doing it: because of politics. And they recognize that they don't know how to deal with it in any way that is going to end up being a success. So they're going to deal with this the way they deal with every crisis. Try to ignore it as long as possible. And that's exactly what they're doing. It's how they dealt with the Chinese spy balloon. It's how they dealt with the train derailment. It's how they dealt with the supply chain issue early on in the administration, where everyone was like, does this Pete Buttigieg guy no longer exist? I had to drag him out in order to talk. This is how they dealt with the crisis with the fires in Hawaii. This is how they're dealing with the crisis with the hurricanes. It's how they dealt with the border crisis. Every single crisis that comes about, their go-to is just put your head in the sand and hope that the next news cycle it'll go away. And when it becomes evident to them that they can no longer do that, then they finally will come out and do whatever they believe is the bare minimum that they have to do in order to survive the day. And that's exactly what's happening with this port strike. Just sitting back and well, no, we're not going to do anything. Even the evacuations. I'm listening last night or yesterday, and there's a listing of countries that are actively working to evacuate their citizens from Israel and Lebanon and, the areas that are real hotspots right now. So the natural question that's asked to the State Department during the press conference, Jake Sullivan yesterday, is, so what are we doing? This country is evacuating their people. This country's what are we doing? And the answer is always, well, we don't really have any plans in place right now. We told people that they probably shouldn't be there. This is the same thing that we heard when it came to evacuating people from Afghanistan and and after October 7th. I mean, we had on the program here family members of those who were stuck, Americans in Israel. Because while other countries had plans in place and were actively executing those plans in order to rescue their citizens, the attitude of this administration was, well, they should have known better. They should have known not to be there. And I mean, it was the exact same thing yesterday. These people, they just try to avoid any difficult decision making until they have absolutely no choice whatsoever. And we're living with the results. Look at the weather here in just a moment. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Colorton Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today it'll be a beautiful fall sunny day with a high near 77. Tonight clear with a low around 54. And for your Thursday and your Friday, we'll heat back up again with a high near 87.
So did you have a favorite moment last night?
I mean, just the whole thing in general. JD Vance did such a tremendous job. I knew he was going to do a good job, but I was just even more just pleasantly surprised, I guess.
Well, what happened, and somebody had texted in that this was the first time they ever even heard Tim Walz speak. And that would be a majority of Americans. I mean, you and I and a lot of you listening, not all of you, but a lot of you listening, you sort of follow this stuff. So you've seen some, or you listen to this show, maybe you've heard clips of interviews, but the vast majority of Americans haven't. But what they've been subject to, and that goes the same for J.D. Vance. I know that seems crazy to a lot of you, and I don't know if it's but there's a very significant portion of the population that this is the first time they've ever actually seen J.D. Vance. And in this capacity in particular, that something that isn't a news story where they just take some sort of clip out of context. And that means that a lot of undecideds in particular watching, have opinions based off of the media's opinions of these two individuals. And so all they know is that J.D. Vance is this sort of mean, bitter guy that people don't like, that Republicans don't like, that Donald Trump regretted picking as his running mate, because that's the narrative, and that Tim Walz is this real folksy guy that is just like the rest of us and is redefining masculinity and is such a breath of fresh air. And so that's what they go into it believing. And the problem with that for the media that's trying to get Kamala Harris elected president is that they set the bar extremely low for J.D. Vance, and when he proved to be otherwise, people are like, oh, well, this guy he seems actually really kind of normal. He speaks normal. The things that he's saying are common sense. I agree with these things. And then they see this goofy-ass weirdo, Tim Walz, that is just like, I'm a knucklehead. You know what? I hear people reference all sorts of characters in order to describe the way that sometimes he'll come out. You know, just that weird, goofy. You know what I think of? I think of Chris Farley. If Chris Farley were alive today, he would play J.D. Vance. Or I'm sorry, he would play Tim Walz.
Yeah.
That guy down by the river character where he's just real flamboyant and waving his arms around and, you know, doing that goofy walk. To me, that's if Chris Farley were alive today, without question, even if he weren't on SNL any longer, he would be brought back in order to play Tim Walz. But he's not. Now, one of my favorite moments from last night, and I had a few, was when he was asked about the latest lie that he told, that he was in Hong Kong during the Tiananmen Square massacre, presumably protesting against it. Well, this turned out, of course, to be a lie. And it was a provable lie. So he was asked about that, and here was his answer.
You said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year.
I have to pause because I just have to point out, you notice how what has long been known, rightfully so, as the Tiananmen Square massacre, they instead describe it as the Tiananmen Square protest. Like, as if China did not just mow over and light on fire their own citizens. Like, I mean, we don't want to upset China, particularly, you know, these major networks that have financial interest in China. So what was these are the same people that call the protest on January 6th an insurrection. But the massacre at Tiananmen Square, oh, communist Chinese, we don't want to insult them. That was just a protest. All right, so continuing on.
Can you explain that discrepancy?
Yeah, well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard.
Why does that matter?
I feel like we're going to pause this. I know.
Why does that matter in that particular question. Quit stalling. Answer the question.
So now, what can you explain the discrepancy? Now, just so everybody understands, I was 6 years old when I first had Pop Rocks, and I remember as a kid, like a lot of you, thinking that if I drank it with soda, my gosh, I would just explode because Mikey died in Vietnam, and we were all riding bikes around town. Like, what are you talking about?
17, worked on family farms, and then I used the GI Bill to become a teacher, a young teacher. My first year out, I got the opportunity in the summer of '89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers, and we would go back and forth to China. The issue for that was to try and learn. Now, look, my community knows who I am. They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years. And in Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people, working on things like farm bills that we got done,
Clearly
working on veterans benefits.
Bill.
And then the people of Minnesota were able to elect me to governor twice. So look, my commitment has been from the beginning to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get this right. I will say more than anything. Many times I will talk a lot. I will get caught up in the rhetoric.
Like he's
but
doing right now.
being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be praising Xi Jinping about COVID. And I guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to do the best you can for your community. And then it's putting yourself out there and letting your folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the discrepancy?
All I said on this is I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests, went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Did you get all that?
The whole thing. The whole thing. You could do 3 hours on that 2.5 minutes there. It's like when he started talking about Trump, he felt like he had momentum. You could hear it. The contradiction, however, so he's talking about how wonderful going to China was, how he learned so much from China, which this isn't any, he's in fact, there are investigations underway because of concerns about his relationship with China, which, of course, should come as no surprise. I don't want to get too far off track here. But when you look at all of the Democrats who have been compromised by communist Chinese, whether it's Swalwell having an affair with a Chinese spy or Dianne Feinstein for, 8 years having a Chinese spy as her right-hand person, it's just, there was another, I forget who it was, was it somebody in the White House? But this isn't anything new. And it's amazing. It's always Democrats. So here, Tim Walz, it's like they continue every new revelation of somebody in this country as a politician being compromised by the communist Chinese, it moves up the ladder. Of course, Biden and Hunter and the millions of dollars flowing from the communist Chinese there. But is there anyone in the Democrat Party that is not compromised by China? But Tim Walz, he's talked glowingly about China in the past, how wonderful it is. His whole presentation, beginning there, was about how great it was and how they took students there to learn so much. But then he flips and he's like, well, if Donald Trump went, then he might not like China so much. Donald Trump should have gone with us. Then he wouldn't be so likely to praise China. Now, wait a minute here. Your first 60 seconds of rambling was about the fact that you went to China. You're proud that you went to China. You went to China. You took students to China. You created this program to take students to China because China is such a wonderful place and they could learn so much from it. Then he shifts to Trump and he starts all of a sudden presenting it that if Trump, as if Trump doesn't have dealings in China, but that if Trump had gone on one of these trips to China, then he would have understood that China's bad. Well, which is it? The incoherence. Oh my gosh. I mean, you think about the fact that this guy could be vice president. I mean, really. So Obama picks Biden, somebody that's clearly dumber. And then Biden picks Harris, somebody that clearly is dumber than him. Harris picked this guy, which increasingly, when you listen to him, is dumber than she is. If that were possible, can you imagine who this guy would pick? I dare not imagine. Because if you had asked before she picked him, noting the constant reduction of any signs of intelligence from one president to their vice president to their vice president in this line of Democrat presidents and vice presidents since Obama, and you were to say, can you imagine what Kamala would pick? And I think the average person, well, the average observant person would say, well, I can't imagine anyone being dumber than her. I think we saw this last night. Now, not by a huge amount, because come on, let's be honest. But still. We got a traffic update. Do want to remind you that, so you just heard Farm Fest. We're going to be out there this weekend. Noon, I'm going to be doing a 1-hour show on Saturday, sort of a special. And we'll be doing the show out there Friday as well. But I want to note, should have noted this earlier, that they actually aren't going to be open at that time. They open at 9 o'clock. So if you were thinking, oh, well, we'll come out there and watch the show, we're just there as the vendors are setting up, sort of kicking off Farm Fest. We will be having our happy hour at Retro Metro 4 to 6, though, so we would love for you to come by and join us there. And, obviously Farm Fest itself, once the doors open, and then again noon on Saturday doing the show. Love for you to come by then. And we'll be there, or I'll be there specifically, Saturday and Sunday. Throughout the day, checking in with a number of our different partners there. And also throwing in a lot of reminders for you here. Coming up Friday, 10 a.m., Local for Less Ozarks. Combo Pass, Hotel of Terror, and Dungeons of Doom, normally $43. You can get them for $21.50. Again, ksgf.com under Locals for Less, 10 a.m. Friday.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Color 10, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today it's going to be a beautiful fall sunny day with a high near 77. Tonight we'll have clear skies with a low around 54. And for your Thursday and your Friday, we will heat back up once again with a high near 87.
I want to mention, I was talking about Retro Metro before the break and how we are having our happy hour 4 to 6 there this Friday. And I want to remind you that, because I know a lot of you follow them on social media and saw that they've shifted to focus just on dinner and not open for lunch. But we are still, they still want to do our lunch bunch. So it'll just be private events that we have now. I mention that because I don't want anyone to think, oh, well, there's no point in registering now because... Or just wonder what's happening with Lunch Bunch. I wonder where it'll be now. It's still going to be at Retro Metro. They're totally awesome. Tiny over there, before it was posted, he said, hey, I want to let you know this is our plan. This is what we're doing. But we want to still do Lunch Bunch. We'll be here. You'll be a private event, have the restaurant to yourselves. And so you can still sign up for that. It'll just be a little more exclusive now for our Retro Metro Lunch Bunch, which we do on Wednesdays. Couple of your text messages before more audio from the debate last night. Why do they get away with saying I misspoke? No, you lied. This is in response to Tim Walz, and he lied about being in Hong Kong with pro-democracy protesters during the Tiananmen Square massacre. He said it's because he's a knucklehead, he gets caught up in the rhetoric, and he misspoke. He also claimed that he misspoke when he lied about serving in combat, running into war with weapons of war. He misspoke. I did not know that's what misspeaking meant. I don't know. It just seems to me like you made something up. This is, again, a characteristic of Democrats. And it isn't to say that Republicans don't at times make things up. In fact, I have what I think is just one of the funniest and at the same time most absurd stories. There's this guy running. He's a Republican. He's running for an open seat in Virginia's 7th District. It's actually a pretty consequential seat, but it turns out that like his campaign photos with him and his wife and 3 kids, that's not his wife and 3 kids. It's his friend's wife and 3 kids. Well, what's even better is he tried to claim that I wasn't pretending they were my family. Lots of people who run for office take pictures with random people. Yeah, but not with your arm around them like a family photo. I mean, what is wrong with people? I mean, look at this is one of the photos. I mean, clearly it is meant to look like here he is at the dinner table. I mean, how do you not know that? And the thing is, he's actually even engaged, but this is his friend's wife anyway. So it's not that Republicans don't make things up, but Democrats, they make up these things that romanticize the life that they wish they had, that make them a storybook character. And I think it's for a number of reasons. One, they're insecure about who they are. They lack I don't think they even know who they are. In many instances, they don't have a them. Their entire lives have been built around creating this persona for the purposes of elections, that they're not really rooted in anything other than just getting power. But outside of that, they don't have a. It's almost as if it's Quantum Leap, in which Sam Beckett would drop into somebody else's body, and he would have to. He had no clue who he actually was. In terms of the person that he was supposed to be. And so he would spend half of the time figuring out what his mission was, but the other half just trying to figure out who his person was that he had landed in on the show. And that's what Democrats, that's how I think they find themselves telling these lies, because they get caught up in them. They oftentimes start when they are running for office on a level in which you're less likely to get called out for it. Tim Walz, how many times did he, in how many interviews, lie about serving in combat? There were numerous instances. It was just like one after, here's an interview here, here's an interview here, here's an interview here. How many times did he lie about his rank in the military? Oh, look, here's an article in which he lied about it. Over here's an interview. And, at the time, they were all local papers throughout his state in which he was either serving as a member of Congress or running for governor. And Joe Biden, similar. Here he's the U.S. senator of a small state. When so many of these lies were told, now he would repeat them, but you got the cognitive issue there. And so these people, Hillary Clinton, another example, dodging sniper fire while on the tarmac in Bosnia. And it's a combination of being insecure, feeling you have to pretend you're someone that you're not, and being able to get away with it for so long. Because, well, you're a Democrat. I mean, no way Republicans can get away with this stuff. No way. I mean, they will nitpick things to death. Fact-checking J.D. Vance. We talked about this yesterday. I mean, this is the difference in how this stuff gets dealt with. He's sarcastically talking about the price of eggs, and his son was with him. He's like, this guy eats like 14 eggs a morning. Oh, MSNBC got on it doing the math, and well, there's no way he eats that many eggs. And it's just, meanwhile, if you're a Democrat, you can run around making all the absurd claims that you want. Now, because it's on a national stage, and Republicans are making an issue of it, Democrats, they feel when they're running a debate, okay, well, we have to address this. So, and it's like, all right, here's your chance to turn this thing around. And so they offer it up for them to try to stop the bleeding on it, or to, make it essentially go away. And that's the only reason that it gets addressed. But, this is how these people, they've become accustomed to lying about things, being able to lie about these things, not having to answer for these things. And this is how you end up with someone that, I just misspoke. That's not misspeaking. Claiming that you served in combat is not misspeaking. Claiming that you were in Hong Kong when you were in fact in, I think it was Nebraska at the time, and you were protesting against the Tiananmen Square massacre, that is not misspeaking. You might as well claim that you went to the moon, on one of the Apollo missions, and then, I guess I just misspoke. That's not misspeaking. There's the furthest thing from it. I mean, if that's misspeaking, when you are a president of the United States or vice president of the United States, I mean, how is it we're supposed to believe anything you say? Misspeaking is, in 1989, I led the passage of some legislation. Actually, it was 99. Yeah, I just misspoke. It's 99, not 89. That's misspeaking, where there's a substance to it, but making things up out of whole cloth. All right, we'll do a couple more bits of audio coming up. Pyramid Roofing Company, talk and text line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. Regarding the incoherent sort of answer, I guess, that Waltz gave regarding China, and part of it was how wonderful China is and how he used to take students there because you learn so much about how wonderful it is as a country. But then he shifted to, well, Trump should have gone with us. Then he'd know China wasn't good. So it was a very contradictory message there. And he accused Trump of being essentially an apologist, not just an apologist, but bragging on China and the way they dealt with COVID. One of the text messages, let's see. He said that Trump was apologetic to China over COVID. This is far from the truth. Trump wanted to close down the country, not let people traveling from China back into the country. And this is true. In fact, at the time, Democrats were accusing Trump of being racist and xenophobic. Nancy Pelosi at one point encouraged people to come down to Chinatown. This was while COVID was exploding. This was before they created the narrative that you would murder people if you went out in public. They were accusing Trump, who was like, maybe, hey, we shouldn't be flying in people from China until we got this thing figured out. They were demanding that he allow people to come into this country from China. Waltz was asked, this was in reference, obviously, to not just the attacks yesterday from Iran on Israel and the recognition by this country that was an escalation. And there has been a lot of open discussion about what does Israel do next? Do they take out the leadership? What about their nuclear weapons? Even the United Nations or their nuclear capabilities. Even the United Nations, which certainly is very forgiving towards Iran, has noted that they are very, very close to having a nuclear weapon. And given the fact that they can fire these missiles over to Israel, they could deliver nuclear warheads. And so the question was, would you support Israel's right to preemptively protect themselves and to go after these nuclear facilities? Now, the answer is yes. Pretty easy answer. Here's Tim Waltz.
Room. Would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. And thank you for those joining at home tonight. Let's keep in mind where this started. October 7th, Hamas terrorists massacred over 1,400 Israelis and took prisoners. Israel's ability to be able to defend itself is absolutely fundamental. Getting its hostages back, fundamental, and ending the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. But the expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States to have the steady leadership there. You saw it experienced today, where along with our Israeli partners and our coalition, able to stop the incoming attack. But what's fundamental here is that steady leadership is going to matter. It's clear, and the world saw it on that debate stage a few weeks ago. A nearly 80-year-old Donald Trump talking about crowd sizes is not what we need in this moment. But it's not just that. It's those that were closest to Donald Trump that understand how dangerous he is when the world is this dangerous. His chief of staff, John Kelly, said that he was the most flawed human being he'd ever met. And both of his secretaries of defense and his national security advisors said he should be nowhere near the White House. Now, the person closest to them, Donald Trump, said he's unfit for the highest office. That was Senator Vance. What we've seen out of Vice President Harris is we've seen steady leadership. We've seen a calmness that is able to draw on the coalitions to bring them together. Understanding that our allies matter. When our allies see Donald Trump turn towards Vladimir Putin, turn towards North Korea, when we start to see that type of fickleness around holding the coalitions together, we will stay committed. And as the vice president said today we will protect our forces and our allied forces, and there will be consequences.
Okay, so what was the answer to the question? Those of you listening, the question was, does he support Israel's right to preemptively carry out a strike? Did you get a yes or no in that?
No.
Yeah, I didn't hear an answer. Because there wasn't one. Aside from the fact that this administration has been the biggest cheerleader for Hamas in terms of what they want and their demands, and openly have argued that Hamas should be rewarded with their own country, just like the Taliban was under this administration. That aside, he can mention, this person said this about Trump. Okay, so you can find people that say Trump's horrible. The Trump campaign can find people that say, no, he's not. How about we just look at the results? Peace in the Middle East. Unprecedented peace deals between numerous countries in the Middle East and Israel. And not just peace deals, I think this actually gets understated. Not just peace deals in the context of, we're not going to fight anymore, but opening up relations and commerce and travel in ways that had never been done so that the countries could mutually benefit from one another, which deepens the relationships beyond just symbolic, but actually in meaningful ways to which they recognize that we benefit from each other. Being friends is beneficial to us, which means that peace in the Middle East is more beneficial to those countries. That is what happened under Trump. Not to mention crippling Iran economically. So yeah, list all the people you want, all the experts you want, all of the retired generals you want, all the people that were in the Trump administration you want, and they can list a whole bunch of people that say he's fantastic, but let's look at the results. You know, the one thing, though, that he said in that I think should be most bothersome to all Americans, and he said it in the beginning. He was, and they always start out this way. Well, now let's remember that, because it makes it sound like they're very pro-Israel. That this started with Hamas, and so he's talking about all of the things that Israel needs to do and has the right to do. And one of the things he referenced, the fact that they need to get back their hostages. We have hostages there too. This is a guy running for the vice presidency, and he doesn't, in that context, even mention that we have hostages there? Does he even remember? Does he know? I suspect that it is so irrelevant to him that it probably didn't even cross his mind that, oh, wait, when I'm talking about hostages, it isn't just Israeli hostages that are there. We have American citizens there as well. And the fact that he didn't even think to mention that, I think, tells us a lot about their priorities. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. We are back on YouTube, so you can watch us there. That's thanks to the good people at Springfield Raps, who also designed the KSGF studio. Got news in 60 seconds, then more show. I'm Nick Reed. As the polling comes out, and there was some snap polls last night. J.D. Vance was the winner. We will play a little bit more audio, but there's obviously a lot more to cover. Really, massive disasters in which the Biden administration is desperately trying to avoid dealing with. You have the aftermath of the hurricanes. We have the increase in developments regarding Iran and their most recent attack on Israel. You have these port strikes in which there's a video, and we'll play the audio of this, of the head of the Longshoremen Union just, in a menacing way, talking about how they will cripple this country. They will cripple Americans' abilities to get goods in order to get what they want. And the administration is just, openly, the Commerce Secretary yesterday said, oh, well, that's not something I'm focused on. The consistent approach of these people is to, when there is some problem that has to be dealt with, that's hard, that's not easy, just hope that it goes away. And you and I know people, you may be one of these people, that you avoid having to deal with things that are unpleasant to deal with. You avoid having to deal with things that are hard. And that's fine, but there are consequences to that in your own life. And if you want to be the leader of a company or an institution or an organization or the country, and you have that approach, then we all suffer for it. It's not just you and your personal life, but the desire to avoid conflict, the desire to avoid dealing with difficult issues is something that trickles down, and we all suffer. And it is just beyond me, other than political. I get it, politically speaking. They don't want to be seen as a failure in trying to avoid some sort of problem with this union situation. But we'll talk about all that coming up. Some more of the debate last night. Let's see here. Trying to find this. I didn't do a good job of getting some of the order here. Tim Waltz. This is on the economy. So, closing remarks on minutes. There's so much audio that I have here. What I was wanting to find, and in fact, we'll get the news and then I'll play it. I'll get stuff in better order over here. All the audio I have is what Vance had to deal with in terms of the media and the debate moderators specifically. And once again, we saw a situation in which it was not 1 versus 1. It was 1 versus 3. And the fact-checking, after they said there would be no fact-checking, these people are so emotionally irrational. They can't help themselves. Just cannot help themselves. So J.D. Vance, of course, fact-checked the fact-checkers, and they just got to the point where they cut his microphone off. It's like, and it was largely because he started making points that they recognized were beneficial to the Trump campaign and ran counter to the narrative that everything in Springfield, Ohio was perfectly fine and that there was no issue going on there. And so that's when they cut his mic off because, they know when he's winning an argument. And so they responded. First, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Colorton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll have a very fall-like day, very sunny with a high near 77. Tonight clear with a low around 54. And for your Thursday and your Friday, we will heat back up once again with a high near 87.
All right, this is what, if you didn't watch the debate, or if you did, of course you witnessed this, they had claimed that, oh, we're not going to do any fact-checking, and out of all of the debates that have taken place, CNN really did do the absolute best, and some are going to say, well, sure, because that's when Trump just annihilated Joe Biden and upturned all of that, but it was because CNN allowed the debate to occur. It was Trump versus Biden. They did not swoop in to try and give assists. And it wasn't that there weren't, I mean, there were some questions that, they always got to go back to January 6th and try to falsely paint that as something that Trump created. But aside from that, then, of course, we saw with ABC News where they fact-checked Trump over and over and over again. Clear lies, blatant lies from Kamala Harris. They did not fact-check, and they gave her all the assists they possibly could. And so that was on demonstration again last night, this time with the CBS moderators.
Thank you, Governor. And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important because
we're going to turn out of the economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
The rules were that you guys were
economy.
going to fact check. And since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by our own
Senator, for
leadership.
describing the legal process.
Kamala
We have so much to get to, Senator. We have so much.
On the book since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The CBP One app has not been on the books since 1990.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut. We have so much we want to get to. Thank you for explaining the legal process. Nora. Thank you, Margaret.
She's such a condescending piece of trash. And you could hear what she was trying to do there. 3 different occasions. Thank you for describing the legal process, trying to make it sound as if what he is discussing isn't an illegal immigration problem. Almost like, well, you're proving our point. Thank you for discussing the legal process. She's trash. This contention, though, that this app, so J.D. Vance he's like, listen, I mean, you can try to defend this all you want, and particularly when they run around saying, oh, well, the illegal immigration numbers are down on the border. Well, no, they're not. What has happened and what he's noting here is that they created an app so that they could more easily funnel people in through ports so that they get around the border. So they get 2 wins out of that. One, they continue to increase the number of illegal immigrants coming into this country. At the same time, they can falsely claim that they're decreasing it. So it's a shell game. And the media knows it. And this is what they don't want people to know. This is why they're interrupting J.D. Vance. This is why they're giving Waltz the whole reason that they did this. Well, just to clarify, because Waltz failed in their opinion. Waltz had an opportunity to counter this. He didn't do it, so that was their opportunity to jump in, tag team style, and say, just for our viewers, we want to make sure that everyone understands really what's going on here. But this contention when Vance is talking about the app that, well, that was created in 1990. Smartphones didn't even exist in 1990. I guess this is Waltz just misspeaking as a knucklehead once again. Yesterday, I'd ask you what you and Dustin were planning on talking about on the show Saturday.
Yes.
And then afterwards, you're like, oh, we're also going to talk about this. But I don't remember. What was it? Do you remember?
Oh, no, you put me on the spot. We were going to talk about the strike. We were going to talk about
Or so you're like, oh, I should have mentioned this.
younger people not wanting to drive.
Was it?
Oh my gosh.
No, I just assumed you would know since it's your show.
I know. Well, I've slept since then.
Well,
We've got a whole list of things we got to talk about.
So Saturday, of course, you can listen to the show, and that's 10 a.m. Right?
Yes.
10 a.m. In fact, I'll be checking in.
Yes, I remember now. Flood vehicles.
Ah, yes.
With all of the flooding.
Yes. That stuff doesn't show up on your Carfaxes and a lot of this, and that's what that I'm telling you, the pre-approval inspection in particular that they do, that's where they find that stuff out. And I'm telling you, they can clean up cars real good to where they do not look like they've been in a flood, but they have been. And so, yeah, that's definitely worth tuning in for. So that'll be with the A1 Custom Car Care Show. See, I'm glad you remembered.
It just took me a minute.
Yeah. Yes. I want to play just a couple of other bits of audio. All day long. On one hand, it could seem like nitpicking, but on the other, it's not. And there was a discussion about, or there was a claim made about guns and gun control in Finland, because now Waltz claims that he's been there. We don't know whether that's true or not. I'm sure we'll find out that it's another lie in which, as a knucklehead, he misspoke. But nonetheless, here's what he said.
Idea that we should just live with it. And I here's what I do think, that this is a good start to the conversation. I 100% believe that Senator Vance hates it when these kids, it's abhorrent and it breaks your heart. I agree with that. But that's not far enough when we know there are things that work. I've spent time in Finland and seen some Finnish schools. They don't have this happen, even though they have a high gun ownership rate in the country.
All right. Thank you. So, in other words, the existence of guns don't cause shootings. This is what frustrates me to no end about living in a society that increasingly rewards the lack of thinking. And that is, here you have they're talking about gun control. And he's citing Finland as an example of, hey, something can be done in order, you say, we have massive school shootings, Finland does not. And he notes that Finland has an extremely high gun ownership, and they don't have, yes, that's because guns don't cause the problem. Thank you.
And in that same conversation, he then said, sometimes it just is the guns.
Yeah, I contradicts himself. I mean, this is what is, oh man, it's not political, it's not right, it's not left, it's like what works, what is the truth. And when you have somebody whose career is partially based on gun control and, and arguing that the existence of guns is the problem, but then argues that in Finland they don't have this problem. I know because I've been there and I've been in the schools and they have lots of guns over there. Yes. It is so maddening. Finland, and I'm not sure now, you look at the statistics and you've got different breakdowns. There's a number of guns per capita, but that doesn't necessarily, I don't think that gives the full story, for example. I mean, you can have two countries, same population, one country that every single person owns one firearm, and so you have 100% firearm ownership. You can have another country where only 10% of the population do, but they own 8 to 12 each. And then if you're doing like guns per person, it looks like they actually have a higher. So the different statistics of how many guns per 100,000 people versus how many households. But Finland, there was a Slate article regarding this issue back in 2005 in which they were the second or third highest gun ownership. They may be a little bit lower now, but they at one point were in using government funds, taxpayer funds, in order to increase the number of shooting ranges throughout the country for citizens, because they recognized that people who are more familiar with firearms and better trained on firearms are going to be safer. I mean, you think of the absurd opposite approach we take in this country. That's the approach that the NRA has always taken. Hey, children need to learn how firearms work. They need to learn, first and foremost, particularly if there's one laying around, you stay away from it. But beyond that, knowing how to use it so you know how they're dangerous. And it's the anti-gun people who go around talking all the time about gun accidents that are against that. That's like refusing to teach children how to use a fire extinguisher if the house catches on fire. Because, well, fires are dangerous, and yeah, that's why they need to know how to use a device that, is associated with fire, or, a stove as an example. I mean, you could draw 100 different analogies of this, but to Tim Walz's point here, Finland was very proactive in making sure people who are not familiar with firearms use them. Maybe that's part of the reason that they had a much lower rate of gun violence. I don't know the answer to that, but if we really do want to explore it, but the fact that you can have a Democrat here get away with throwing out a factual bit of information that completely contradicts his party's entire premise of firearms, and then everyone just moves on like nothing. It's not a discussion point. He was probably just being a knucklehead who misspoke. I mean, that's the opportunity you would just love to say, well, why do you think that is? How is it that Finland can have such a high gun ownership and not have mass shootings like we do? Answer that question. There were a number of things that they went back and forth on. Vance is right. Waltz supports infanticide. The Democrats continue desperately to try to hide the fact that they support killing or allowing to die horrifically mangled babies that are born alive because of a botched abortion. Now, I'm going to say something that people are going to think is a little bit over the line, but I don't care. And I'm not saying it to exaggerate an issue to make a point. I don't know that there's much of a difference between a human being that supports that and that supported what was done to human beings during the Holocaust. Any human being, and I put Tim Walz in this category. I know everyone loves to, Trump is a Nazi and so forth. I'm going to give just very specific examples. When you sign legislation that says if a baby is born alive after a failed attempt to rip its limbs from its own body in order to kill it, or some other botched, way of going about it, that will just let it lay there until it suffers so greatly it finally gives in to death, I don't think that makes you any better of a person morally than a Nazi who ushered children into the showers. And I'm sure some people will disagree with that, but I have a very, very difficult time distinguishing much difference between those two positions. And they know. And by the way, that's what will be constitutionally protected in Missouri if Amendment 3 goes through, as long as, someone who's performing the abortion declares that you'll be sad if you have this baby, so emotionally you need the abortion for your emotional health. That will be perfectly legal in Missouri. That has happened, and it's not some theoretical situation. According to the government's own statistics, it's happened, I believe, 8 different times since Walz signed that into law in Minnesota. There was I don't know if it's this story. There was one story that had a breakdown of how each of those 8 situations played out. Here we go. The Daily Signal reported, between January 1st of 2021 and December 31st of 2021, physicians performed 5 abortions that resulted in a baby's live birth. No measures were taken to help the first baby, who reportedly had fetal anomalies that resulted in death shortly after delivery. 2 of the babies were given comfort care measures. Well, how compassionate. They were given comfort care measures as they died. No measures were taken to preserve life of the last 2 babies who were pre-viable. Previous data from the Minnesota Department of Health reveal that physicians have been leaving babies to die after failed abortions for years. Between January 1st of 2019 and December 31st of 2019, 3 abortions resulted in born-alive babies that were then left to die. The first baby reportedly had fetal anomalies, but also had residual cardiac activity for 2 minutes, yet no efforts were taken to preserve the baby's life, and the infant did not survive. The second baby who died while comfort care measures were provided. The third was pre-viable, did not receive any attempts to preserve his or her life. Hence, it does not appear that any of the babies born alive in botched abortion survived. Now, there was a Born Alive Infants Protection Act, but last year the Minnesota legislature repealed it, and Waltz signed the repeal of it. You have to be a sick monster to deliberately change the law that says if a baby is born alive after a botched abortion, you just leave it there suffering in pain and let it die. And they know that they're sick. Just like just like Jeffrey Dahmer did what he could to cover his tracks. Just like any psychopathic killer that feels compelled and even tell themselves sometimes they're doing it for righteous reasons or whatever, but they try to cover their tracks. They hide what they're doing because they know that society rejects it. That's why the Democrats cover this stuff up. That's why Tim Waltz stands up there on stage and lies about what's going on in Minnesota and other states in this country because of the Democrats. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Wilder RV, great time of year to go RVing. Also a good time to perhaps do upgrades with Wilder RV. A number of the different options have got acres of different RVs there for all families, all lifestyles. And with the lower prices into the year, maybe it is time for an upgrade or winterizing. Get ready for that. Keep it in mind. You're like, oh, I'm going to go out and do some camping. As we make it through the autumn weeks and months, that's fine. But when it does come to winterizing, remember, Wilder RV, they do that along with the full spectrum of repairs, HVAC, plumbing, electrical, What you name it, and they can do it. Wilder RV, Clinton, Missouri, just north of Springfield on 13. Also at ksgf.com under Nick's endorsements.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Color 10, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 77. Tonight clear with a low around 54. For your Thursday, sunny with a high near 87. And on Friday, sunny with a high near 88.
And when you need those home loans, I want a great homeloan.com. Even if it's your second opinion, I think that when it comes to financial decisions, second opinions are good. It is not one size fits all. And oftentimes, if you go to your financial institutions, a place that you traditionally go to, they do the easy stuff. They're more about volume. And so the moment that it looks like it's going to be difficult or complicated, they pretty much write you off and stop working with you. And if you don't know how it is to overcome some of those obstacles, whatever they may be, then you can give up and become very frustrated. That's where the Carricker team at iwantagreathomeloan.com, one of the areas that they really excel. And in fact, I've had conversations with them in which people have come to them because they were pretty much just ghosted by their financial institution because there were some difficulties that popped up, and the team over there, they figured it out and they got people into their new homes. So even if you already are set and in your mind, and I've always gotten my loans from my bank, give them a shot. It doesn't hurt. It's not going to cost you anything to find out what offerings they have for you as well. iwantagreathomeloan.com, because you do. Last night, Tim Walz also said that they have the lowest teenage pregnancy rate in Minnesota. Pretty easy to do if you kill all the unborn. Well, that's true, too. Just the disposability in which they view human beings. It is, and with such, this is what's real sick about it. They present it as a virtue. Think about that. They present an entire segment of the population as being completely disposable, and then present that as if it's a virtuous stance. A few more bits of audio here. I think that nothing sums up the difference between the support that each of these two campaigns are getting within the American population than part of what Tim Walz said in his closing statement last night.
The support of the democracy matters. It matters that you're here. And I'm as surprised as anybody of this coalition that Kamala Harris has built, from Bernie Sanders to Dick Cheney to Taylor Swift.
Yep, there you have it. That is the Democrat Party. Rich elite, rich elite, rich elite. Even Bernie Sanders, the socialist. Wealthier than the vast majority of Americans will ever think about being. But that's the great thing about being socialist. If you're in power, you get to be rich. It's everyone else who has to be poor. And, of course, no middle class whatsoever. By the way, I'm not surprised at all. His presentation that he's surprised at what he sees as wonderful. By the way, he's bragging that across party lines, the uber elite, the uber wealthy are supporting Kamala Harris, while we continue to see the working class person support Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. That is the Trump coalition and the Harris coalition. Is the Taylor Swifts, the Oprah Winfreys, the Dick Cheneys. Have them. Knock yourself out. I think it is incumbent upon us to make sure Americans understand that there is a vast difference there, and that this is far beyond a Republican versus Democrat campaign, more so than any I know in my lifetime, and it's about the elites versus the vast majority of everyone else. It's about the insiders and the uber wealthy versus the working person. That's why Donald Trump has 31% lead with working class people over Kamala Harris, while Kamala Harris has a 99-1 lead with the uber wealthy, elite, rich celebrity class. It's not by accident. Not by accident at all. Britt Hume last night summarizing his thoughts on the debate.
Well, the moderators were obnoxious and made it feel like 3-on-1 on Vance, and Vance was just fine. He seems to have been, his skills as a debater and a speaker seem to have been honed to some extent by just these several months on the campaign trail. And for one so young, he seemed, in terms of his knowledge of policy, to run rings around poor Governor Walz, who I think did not have a very great night. As you say, Brett, he got better as the night wore on. But if you're rating this debate on points, it wasn't close. Vance had a good night.
Then over, of course, Britt Hume with Fox News, CNN.
I think we shouldn't lose track. I think even in the civility of the fact that J.D. Vance came to this debate to land a bunch of punches, and he did. He landed a lot of punches in between all the niceties and all of that. And the thing that really stood out to me was that Tim Walz did not seem prepared for it.
And then over to ABC News post-debate.
I feel like that was really effective. But I think overall tonight, if you're an undecided voter in America, I don't know that you come away with tonight with an additional clarity. It kind of reminded me of the June 27th debate when Kamala Harris that night said of Joe Biden, it was a slow start, but a strong finish. And that's how I felt that Tim Walz kind of did tonight. You know, to use Tim Walz's own words, I mean, a lot about this debate tonight was weird. There were uncomfortable, cringy moments. But overall, I think my takeaway was something that Reince Priebus said on the outset, which was that J.D. Vance needed to come away as that humble, likable guy from Hillbilly Elegy. It seemed like he did perhaps get some points in that area.
Let me take it right to Reince Priebus.
All right, so pretty universally, he came away the winner in this thing, and it will be noted, and it is accurate, particularly with vice presidential debates. It's like, does it really make much of a difference? I think that it will in this instance, in that Kamala is not going to gain anything out of it, and those undecideds they're looking for a lot of them. They don't like Trump, but they recognize that Trump did, that life was better when it came to so many things, when it came to world peace, when it came to the border, when it came to our pocketbooks, that life was better, things were better. Remember how they managed to successfully paint his years as chaotic? I mean, can you get any more chaotic than things are? You just look at the last 48 hours in this world. I mean, I don't know if simultaneously between the floods, I mean, just forget the border at this point, but the floods, the attacks on Israel, which are happening only because of the lifting of sanctions by this administration on Iran, and all of these strikes hitting the ports. I mean, it's just the chaos is insane. These voters who are undecided, many of them are looking for Kamala Harris to give them some reason to say, okay, this is a good enough reason to abandon the success of the past and go to Kamala Harris. And every day that she doesn't say anything that gives them that, which she has not done, is a day that she's losing. And this is why the polls, particularly in the swing states, have, with her announcement and the media presenting her as if she is the great savior of all things, got her a bit of a bump, but things have been moving back in Trump's direction, and this is the reason why. And then, they watch a debate last night, and they are told, having never really seen Vance in this setting before, that he is this smug, horrible pick, that Donald Trump's campaign is sorry that they chose him, and is there a way to dump him? And the cat lady comment, oh my gosh, what sort of horrible anti-woman person is he? He's anti-cats. And then Tim Walz, the folksy guy that is the new form of masculinity that everyone loves, and then they tune in and they walk away like that. Wait a minute. Actually, this Walz guy is kind of nutty. And this J.D. Vance guy, he doesn't seem like what he's been presented as. The betting markets last night, which people could bet who's going to win the debate, started out about 70-30. 70% saying that Tim Walz was going to win the debate over J.D. Vance. And that's because of the way that the media presents these two people. And a lot of the people that do the betting, they do the betting because of betting, not because they're political junkies that actually follow this stuff and know what's going on. But they go based off the temperature of just the way that things are presented. And because of the way the media has presented these two people, it was a no-brainer. 70%. The betting market, it was that Walz is going to win this thing. By the end of the debate, Walz was down to 27%. And I'm telling you, the media does itself, its goals, a disservice. The goal of getting Kamala Harris elected president by creating false impressions, falsely positive impressions of her and Walz, and then falsely negative impressions of J.D. Vance in particular. And then when people are exposed to them, it's the opposite. And so it really swings that pendulum. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. This is a very short piece I thought I'd share before I want to play some audio of Representative Brian Donalds of Florida. He's Republican congressman, black, and he was on the Breakfast Club with Charlemagne, kind of schooling some of them on how Kamala Harris is responsible for inflation. But this is a very short piece in the Federalist. Vance won't be allowed back on live TV after dominating debate. It's safe to assume we're never going to see J.D. Vance on live television again, at least not until the election's over. This dude so thoroughly dominated the vice presidential debate on Tuesday night, there's no way cable news producers are going to book him again. He'd put them out of business. If you didn't watch the event on CBS, the affair was a setup from the beginning. One of Trump's greatest electoral weaknesses is among suburban women. Naturally, CBS cast 2 women note card readers to, quote, moderate the debate for the explicit purpose of daring Vance into a conflict with either of them. Vance never took the bait. He parried every onslaught. He even conceded agreements to Kamala Harris's running mate, Tim Walz, when it was warranted. In short, the 3 Democrats ganging up on Vance didn't get him. He got them. He beat them. Donald Trump is the greatest salesman in the world, but his running mate just sold Trump's presidency and campaigned for a second term. Greater than the greatest salesman in the world. Vance deftly explained that Walz is backing the person who's in the White House at this moment. Vance said that he promises their making should be fulfilled in the past 3 years, but instead Kamala has repeatedly done the opposite as vice president. That includes her new and fake promises of bringing down crime, limiting immigration at the southern border, reversing grocery prices, and on and on. Kamala seems to make up policy on the daily and pretend it's fine, which is another way of intimating she's never had any vision on the matters to begin with. The truth is, during Tuesday's debate, Walz revealed himself to be in over his head. He couldn't remember the details of what had been crammed into his head by the campaign, which is, incidentally, the same problem Kamala has had during her entire tenure as vice president. Walz struggled to speak and gave no legitimate counter-argument to Vance's case. Vance exceeded expectations, but unlike what the media said about Kamala in the last debate, this was real. There is a lack of understanding about the significance of Kamala Harris's play when it comes to inflation. And when Republicans point to her as being responsible for inflation, people infer from that they're just saying that because, well, she's part of the Biden administration. And Biden's responsible for it, and she's the vice president, and so she's also responsible for it. And I think we all need to understand that that is not what's going on. And I got to get a traffic update, but I want to play for you Byron Donalds, and he was on The Breakfast Club with Charlemagne and that whole crew, and he's talking about Kamala Harris and talking about inflation, and one of the members pushes back. This is a show, it's an urban show in New York, and you know, plays the, well, it's not, Kamala was just vice president. She didn't really actually have anything to do with it, and his response to it, because it is very, very important that we all understand this so that we can also correct any disinformation that may be put out there that Kamala really, as vice president, did not have anything to do with inflation. That audio next. Kamala Harris is part of this administration. She has been very supportive of everything this administration has done. And so Republicans, as she campaigns around saying, turn the page, we need to do things differently, or noting we're doing what you wanted to do. I mean, this is you. You're part of this administration. The pushback against that from her supporters which is hilarious because Biden supporters are her supporters, but then they try to defend her by separating her from the positions of this administration they defend. But it's that, well, she didn't really have anything to do with these economic policies that caused the inflation. She was only vice president. And I think it's very important for Republicans and you as citizens, if you hear this, to make sure people understand what's going on. This is exactly what happened on the Breakfast Club. I believe this was yesterday's show. It's an urban station in New York. And Republican Representative Byron Donalds addressed this very issue.
Right. We're really thriving right now. This inflation, which, by the way, was brought to us by Kamala Harris, has really slowed down people from being able to excel.
By Kamala?
Yes.
Vice president.
Charlemagne.
Still the president.
Charlemagne, listen, man. When Joe Biden wanted to do his American Rescue Plan, Kamala Harris was the tie-breaking vote in the United States Senate. She broke the tie that started this inflation that has hurt so many people in our country. Everybody listening to your show. It's not true?
First of all, it's
you sure
true
you
that
want to go
it's a
there?
tie-breaking vote.
You sure you want to go there?
Go outside,
What you
Congressman,
pulling
when you
out?
go outside
You sure
in
you
your
want to go there?
district,
Okay, let's go there.
you had it
You got
pretty
notes.
much.
You got notes, Angela, right?
That's fine. I have notes
I'm
too.
gonna give it. I'm gonna give it to
biggest note I
Charlemagne.
have
I'm
today
gonna give it to
is
Charlemagne.
that
I
on
don't
every
even want to hold
question I've
it
asked,
because Angela,
for
hold on now. Go
for
ahead.
every infrastructure project in your community,
You can go to
should
third page, just the
and
highlighted
thank
portion.
Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the Congress that voted for the American Rescue Plan. That's what should be happening.
Larry Summers wrote an op-ed in 2021. Larry Summers was the Treasury Secretary for Bill Clinton. He was an economic advisor to Barack Obama. He said that the American Rescue Plan that Joe Biden wanted, that Kamala Harris was the tie-breaking vote in the United States Senate, would create a massive inflation that we have not seen in a generation. Well, guess what? Larry Summers was correct. You know who also was correct, Angela? I was, because I was in the budget committee when they brought the bill. And I said in that committee, it's going to cause massive inflation. That's what happened.
Now, the visuals of this while it's occurring, what he did when he pulled out of he was clearly ready for this moment. He pulled out of his jacket, inner jacket pocket. It was an article talking about probably from that time in which she cast the tie-breaking vote in order to push that through. And he hands it over to Charlemagne, the host. And the entire rest of the conversation, Charlemagne is reading through it. I mean, you can see this is news to him. He did not realize this. And he's reading through it and realizing for the very first time that the tying of Kamala Harris to inflation isn't rhetorical. It isn't simply because she is the vice president under Biden. It's because she cast that vote, that tie-breaking vote that made this become the law of the land, that caused all of this spending that resulted in the skyrocketing of inflation was because of her. She did that. Tiebreaker. As presiding over the Senate. The person that he was sparring with tried desperately to divert, saying that, well, all of the people who have been suffering under these policies, they should be thankful every time they see an infrastructure improvement, which, of course, is, I mean, go ahead and make that argument. What she's saying is that whenever the single mom with kids in the back of the car and she is sick to her stomach because she wasn't able to buy enough groceries to make it throughout the week, and she's stuck in traffic because of construction, she should be grateful for that. Because look at this construction project that's going on that doesn't help you any other than keeping you stuck in traffic. You should be grateful for that. It's worth the increased cost of groceries. That was the pitch. We've got news coming up in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. Hitting the shelves in the Springfield market, Bradford Lights, Pineapple Life Coach. These are Kansas Territory Brewing Company beers out of Washington, Kansas, making their way into the Springfield market. Billboards up in the area. You may hear ads as well. The Pineapple Life Coach, of course, is just a little more, I wouldn't say niche-y, but not everyone likes a off-the-beaten-path beer. All the pineapple beers I've had are usually IPAs. This one is not. So if you don't like the hoppiness so much, it may be one for you. And the Bradford Light is, I think their whole sort of target here is just having your go-to beer. That you got in the fridge. It's always there for you to grab when you want one. The Bradford Light, the Kansas Territory Brewing Company, beers are brought to the area by Show Me Beverage, and you can learn more about them by going to KansasTerritoryBrewingCo.com. Okay. All right. So another crisis that the administration is attempting to just pretend isn't a crisis and hoping it will go away is the port strike. The White House has remained firm in its position that it will not intervene in negotiations between port workers and dock employees as trade flows screech to a halt, and the lead union boss threatens to cripple the economy less than 35 days before the presidential election. A general strike spread across most of the major ports on the U.S. East Coast Tuesday as the labor union representing the workers, International Longshoremen Association, otherwise known as the ILA, said dock employees failed to give in to their demands. The strike threatens to plug up an estimated $2.1 billion in daily trade flows from the busy ports as the presidential election and holiday season fast approaches. Republicans and hundreds of industry associations have called on Biden to invoke the Taft-Hartley Act. This is a law that originally passed in 1947 that gives the president the authority to intervene in strikes if they threaten to cause a national emergency. The act was last used in 2002 by Bush to reopen ports on the West Coast after employers prevented longshoremen from entering their facilities. Before the strike began, however, Biden signaled that he would not invoke the act, especially given the immense damage from Hurricane Helene across the U.S. Southwest, persistent inflation as the holiday season approaches, that increasingly people find this to be avoidance of the issue. Now, some may ask, why would the unions put him in this position? Because even though blue-collar workers and workers with unions are supportive of Trump, as we have seen. In fact, every single state, a majority of Teamsters support Donald Trump over Kamala Harris. It's one of the many unions. So why would they take on an action that could hurt Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, rather? I mean, they desperately are trying to claim that they have things under control and that the economy is getting better and it's wonderful and everything's great and fine if once again we have a problem with inflation caused by bottlenecking, or not even bottlenecking, but just the refusal for these items to come in. You've got lacking of the items on the shelves. I mean, just going back to what it is that people are exhausted of in this country. Why would they risk that? And I suspect it's because they see it as leverage. That they can utilize the threat of potentially tanking the Democrats' control of things by tanking the economy, or at least, if not tanking it, running into the election, making things appear as if they are getting worse, making people feel the pain. And that gives them a tremendous amount of leverage for the Biden administration to want to force this thing through, to want to make sure that they get what it is that they want so that everything goes back to normal. It's leverage. Essentially, for political purposes, holding the country hostage when it comes to this particular issue. Now, if you think that that's harsh, Listen to this interview. This is the president talking about leading up into a strike. This is the president of the Longshoremen Union.
I'm not asking for the world. They know what I want. They know what I want. And if they don't, well, then I have to go into the street and we have to fight for what we rightfully deserve. These people today don't know what a strike is. Right. When my men hit the streets from Maine to Texas, every single port will lock down. You know what's going to happen? I'll tell you. First week, be all over the news every night, boom, boom. Second week, guys who sell cars can't sell cars because the cars ain't coming in off the ships. They get laid off. Third week, malls start closing down. They can't get the goods from China. They can't sell clothes. They can't do this. Everything in the United States comes on a ship. They go out of business. Construction workers get laid off because the materials aren't coming in. The steel's not coming in. The lumber's not coming in. They lose their job. Everybody's hating the longshoremen now because now they realize how important our jobs are. Now I have the president screaming at me, I'm putting a Taft-Hartley on you. Go ahead. Taft-Hartley means I have to go back to work for 90 days as a cooling off period. Do you think when I go back for 90 days, those men are going to go to work on that pier? It's going to cost the companies money to pay their salaries. Well, they went from 30 moves an hour maybe to 8. They're going to be like this. Who's going to win here in the long run? You're better off sitting down and let's get a contract and let's move on with this world. And in today's world, I'll cripple you. I will cripple you, and you have no idea what that means.
All right, so that is the ILA president, Harold Daggard, in a video post saying that, talking about the American economy, the American people, he'll cripple us collectively in order to get what it is that he wants. Now, from a public relations standpoint, I don't know that apparently there's no concern about winning over popular opinion amongst the American people, trying to get them on your side. Because when you are out there, by the way, the guy looks like a thug. In the video, he's got a gold chain that he's wearing, and he looks like a thug. He looks like somebody that would take a lead pipe and bust somebody's kneecaps for not voting in favor of unionizing. That's what this guy looks like. And to be there threatening the American people, I will cripple you in order to get what I want, I don't believe is something that is going to win a lot of sympathy, particularly when the rest of America is dealing with the inflation issues that we have and the problems with, the pocketbook issues, looking for like a 70% increase, 70% increase in salaries. The other big hang-up here, which is a whole nother issue, and is they don't want to automate things. And they don't want to automate things because they don't want to be replaced. This is actually one of the reasons that we had so many issues during COVID with shortages on the shelves. It wasn't that ports were closed as much as a lot of what a number of other countries throughout the world had automated so they could continue could not happen here in the United States because it required actual people, because the unions have been successful in preventing the advancement of technology, making things cheaper and more efficient when it comes to port deliveries. And they've done it in order to preserve their own jobs. And so while other countries were oftentimes able to manage to continue the delivery of products through the ports, though it may have been slowed down because of automation, we weren't able to. When it comes to the technologically advanced abilities of our ports, we are at the bottom of the barrel in the world. We are so far behind. And this is a big part of the problem that we do have in this country, that we are, they just refuse to let us catch up to the rest of the world for their own preservation. Now, Biden has fully said, he's been asked, you going to intervene in this? No, not going to. They're taking a bit of a gamble here, and I want to share what the gamble is from the Biden-Harris perspective regarding this. Some of this is touched on in a Politico piece, because this is exactly what the president should arguably be intervening in. There are laws that were passed in order to address these issues that can be invoked by the president. And for a guy who claims that he, more than anyone, is the working person's a president, for him to be like, nope, sorry, you're on your own, and so is the country, while the leader of the union is threatening to cripple us, is more of what you get from this administration. Springfield's Talk 1041 latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Color 10, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today it's going to feel very much like fall. We'll see sunny skies with a high near 77. Tonight clear with a low around 54. And for your Thursday and your Friday, we'll heat back up with a high near 87.
And so Biden is staying out of the port strike because everything that is significant, in which the country really needs some presidential leadership, this current administration manages to be AWOL, nowhere to be found. And like every potential emergency, they let it become an emergency. They do not get ahead of things. They hope, they cross their fingers and hope that things will get better on their own. And we've seen this over and over and over again. This is why we should all be gravely concerned about the state of affairs in the half a dozen states in which now the death toll's up over 160 with these emergencies. We saw it in Hawaii with the fires there. We saw it with the train derailment, with the chemical spill. And it's just pretending as if nothing is a problem until they get backed into a corner and they have absolutely no choice, they feel, other than to address it. The spy balloon is another example of it. Getting people out of Afghanistan, another example. I mean, and so now we're talking about potentially, billions of dollars a day. As if people are not dealing with a punishing economy enough, making things even worse. And the administration's stance is that, no, Biden's not going to deal with this. Yesterday, he was asked, Mr. President, will you intervene in the dock workers' strike? If they go on strike on Tuesday, a reporter asked the president, I guess this was from the day before. Biden replied, no. The question, why not? Quote, because there's collective bargaining, and I don't believe in Taft-Hartley. Taft-Hartley was last used in 2002, and it for 60 days forces the workers to go back to work. It's a, quote, cooling off period. So it allows for things to continue on when it comes to port deliveries while negotiations are going on. The president of the union, however, has said, so what, do it. We'll destroy the economy anyway. We will cripple the economy if we don't get what we want. And what they are wanting is over 70% pay increase over 6 years. And most damaging is a stop to automation that brings us in line with the rest of the world, and that makes it cheaper and more efficient and less likely to be interrupted in case of any sort of disaster like COVID that prevented people from going to work. In other words, they want to stop the things that would make life better for all of us in a free market system, all for the sake of keeping their jobs. Now, that's a separate issue. We'll talk about that in a moment. Now, Just the News, they note that the White House again yesterday confirmed that Biden will not use the authority under the act to intervene in the negotiations, even as the union digs in its heels for the long haul. The White House indicated its calculus stems from briefings by federal agencies on the potential impact of the strike, which are expected to be limited at this time on consumers. So what they're acknowledging here is that they are hoping that the real damage to the average American, the real pain, won't happen until after the election. That the timing of this allows for a little bit of buffer zone. And that, there's a couple of weeks here for a lot of these items in which, you got businesses and they've got the stuff in the back room and some of the stuff currently in transit. And so, then it will be a slow but surely. It's not necessarily going to be this real fast overnight, oh my gosh, where are all the items on the shelves? And so timing this out, they're hoping that you won't feel the real pain until after the election is over. That way, they aren't impacted by this because their number one priority is not you. Their number one priority is having Kamala Harris be in the White House for 4 years. And this isn't an unusual move from this administration. This is why this administration has tapped our oil reserves in the past. It was to try and offset the pain at the pump to get through the election. This is why it was revealed that the administration went to Saudi Arabia prior to, I believe it would have been the midterm elections. It would have been the midterm elections, trying to get them to increase oil production up through the election. Because they create scenarios in which the baseline is negative for the American people. They recognize that that could be harmful when it comes election time, so they try to tweak things temporarily so you don't know how bad things are. It's the only time they seem to really pay attention to making things better for the American people, and that is to get them through an election. And then it goes right back to the way it was before. And so the fact that this administration is acknowledging that they believe that the real pain won't start for a little ways down the road, and they think that they can stay out of this and not have to do anything about it, not step in, not, display any sort of leadership, and the average voter won't really feel the pain until it's too late. Now, isn't that fantastic leadership from this administration? Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. $10 a.m. Friday morning, Local for Less Ozarks, combo passes to Hotel of Terror and Dungeons of Doom. Normally $43, you can get them for $21.50. Massive save, particularly if you're going with a friend or, you got a family of 4. It's going to save you a lot of money. They will go fast. That will be coming up on Friday, 10 a.m. at KSGF.com. This is the Commerce Secretary's response in regards to the commerce crisis that is underway due to the port strikes.
Where have you been kind of focused and hearing on what would happen if the strike goes, let's say, longer than a week?
Again, I have not been very focused on that.
Not very focused on that. This is the same person that just a few weeks ago, whenever the federal government revealed labor statistics that all of those jobs the administration claimed they had created weren't actually created, and when presented with those numbers, said, "Oh, I don't believe those numbers. Those are Trump numbers." And no, these are the government's numbers. Well, I'm not really familiar with that then. This is the Commerce Secretary. Are any of these people qualified for the jobs that they're given? I mean, seriously, any of them? Name me one. These people seem to be so uninformed in the area that they are supposed to clearly be experts. They don't even know how to fake their way through sounding like they know what they're talking about. So they just, I don't really know about that. I don't know. I haven't really been paying much attention to that. Usually, if you know just a little bit, you can kind of fake it. These people are just so void of any knowledge in the areas of the government in which they are supposed to be in control. They can't even fake their way through sounding like they know what they're talking about. They just throw their hands up. I'm not really paying much attention to it. I got other things going on. A little too busy. Watching Dancing with the Stars. Whatever it is. Unbelievable. It's not, actually. The fact that it's not unbelievable is what is unbelievable.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Color 10, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 77. Tonight clear with a low around 54. For your Thursday, sunny with a high near 87. And on Friday, sunny with a high near 88.
We played audio in the previous segment of or maybe the segment prior to that, the head of the union, the International Longshoremen's Association, ILA, Harold Daggett, in which he has said, bring it on. I will cripple this economy. I will cripple it. That is the power that we have in all of this. And, of course, the people that are going to be harmed disproportionately are middle and lower class Americans. This isn't going to be a big deal to the Taylor Swifts, the Dick Cheneys, the Oprah Winfreys, the Kamala Harris supporters, other than those that are middle and lower class. It will harm them. This guy that is openly threatening to cripple our economy. Last year, according to Politico, made over $900,000. Drives a Bentley and has a 76-foot yacht. The New York Times is the one that noted that he owned a 76-foot yacht, at least as of January 2017, and that he's known by members of the union to drive around in a Bentley. He made $728,000 from the ILA last year and an additional $173,000 for being the president emeritus of ILA Local 1804-1, according to Politico. So like most power moves made by the left, they're not impacted. They don't suffer. As if we haven't been through enough the last several years. I mean, they don't get a lot of attention, but you can find, and we've played them here, audio of, and it's largely in the cities, and oftentimes women of color, breaking down and crying, talking about what it's like to go to the grocery store today versus 4 years ago. And you have some Bentley driving, yacht owning, high six-figure income thug braggadociously saying, I'll cripple all you people if we don't get what we want. And then a president who's like, hey, we'll just let this play out. No big deal. And again, according to Politico, because the strategic plan from the Democrats here is that you won't actually feel the real punishing pain until after the election. So they can probably get away with this. There's two main components to this. One is the demand of over 70% increase in salary over 6 years. The USMX, on the other side of the negotiations, they agreed to increase wages by 50% over 6 years, but that wasn't enough. 50% increase. Not bad. But it's not just the financial increase in the salaries that is of concern. It's stopping technological progress. And this isn't anything new. We are behind the rest of the world when it comes to automation at these ports. We're in the Stone Ages. And we're in the Stone Ages because they recognize that oftentimes with technology, goods and services become cheaper. And the reason that they become cheaper for the consumer is because it, doesn't cost as much to develop them, to create them, or to deliver them, because you have automation that can do that. And while we as a nation and as a people, we benefit from that free market system situation, the unions thus far, in the capacity of port automation, have blocked us from benefiting from that technology, thus artificially increasing the cost and the lack of efficiency of products being delivered. As I mentioned before, this is largely why there was such a problem with deliveries during COVID, because while other countries are able to utilize automation in a number of capacities at their ports, we rely on people. And when the government started shutting down or the union started demanding that they not go to work because of COVID, we were left behind the rest of the world. We couldn't deliver things. Oftentimes the left, and listen, different unions are different, obviously, but we're talking about this one in particular. But the left and the Democrat Party paints unions as a whole as not just wonderful for union members, but wonderful for the rest of us, because we're told it makes all of our lives better. They claim, without evidence, that the reason that we get paid so much, the reason that you're just swimming in cash, is because unions demand that they get more money, and because they get more money, somehow that trickles down to the rest of us. And so we are told we're supposed to be grateful because our economic situation in life is improved by unions. Here you have the head of this union threatening to cripple us economically if they don't get what they want. And this will make prices higher on items. I don't know about you, but that doesn't really seem like a real big bonus. And as an added bonus, prepare for this. If this goes through, the strike continues, and what is going to be the natural and needed result, and that is a spiking in prices, because otherwise people, what we could very well see are items becoming like toilet paper during COVID, where you're standing in line for it, it's days at a time, you can't get it, and you have shortages. I mean, literally the left is bringing us food shortages in the United States of America in 2024. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden will blame the grocery stores, particularly when the prices go up. Because as you know, with supply and demand, the less supply and the more demand, the higher the cost is, which is actually a good thing, because I'll explain that in a moment, why it's a good thing. I don't want to get lost on that. But they'll blame the grocery stores, say that they are price gouging. As usual, they will blame the victim. After the break, it won't take long, but I want to explain why not only is it natural that prices increase when there are shortages, but that when the price, or that the price increases, but that it's actually a good thing. It serves as a positive function, as opposed to the quote price gouging that they like to characterize it as. That next, I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. The Pyramid Roofing Company. Fall is here, which means that rainy season and cooler weather will be here before you know it. And if you have been putting off doing roof repairs and maintenance, now is the time to do it. And I want to recommend Josh and his team over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, the Pyramid team, they don't cut corners. They offer free roof inspections. They use high quality materials, and they add ice and water shield to just give your roof that extra layer of protection. And they're going to be honest about the work that needs to be done. Whether you need a whole new roof or just a simple roof repair, they're going to get you all taken care of. So if you are wanting to get ahead of all of your roofing needs before that cooler weather hits, go ahead and give Josh and his team a call today. You can find all of the contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
I want to explain why, because this is something we may very well see. Price increases, sometimes significant price increases on everyday goods and products when there is a shortage, is actually a good thing, serves a good function. Now, the people who are seen as in charge and supposed to prevent these things from happening, they always accuse the victim, and that is the store itself, trying to gouge you, trying to really screw you over. You can think back to COVID with toilet paper, or sometimes when hurricanes occur, or prior to the occurrence, or once water starts getting delivered in the aftermath of a hurricane, people will buy it up, tons of it. And I remember, and you may be one of the offenders, but there would be people that, with the shortage of, we'll talk about the toilet paper, would take pictures of people at the store who had their cart filled with toilet paper because they happened to be there when the shelves got stacked, and they took it. And the pictures were taken to shame people, because they would note there's not that much, there's a shortage, and here this piece of work has 80 frickin' packages of toilet paper in their shopping cart. Now, when the price of toilet paper doesn't fluctuate significantly during a shortage, economically speaking, there's no downside to purchasing as much as you possibly can, because you know you're going to use it, right? And if you are used to buying a roll of, like a package of 4 at $5, once the toilet paper shortage is over, if the prices stayed consistent, then, down the road and the shortage is over, it still costs $5. And the only difference is you already bought a year's worth. So, you're not out anything at all. But when the price increases and you begin thinking about the fact that, okay, at some point we're going to get past this, the waters will recede, the COVID will go away, we will end up back in a scenario in which toilet paper drops down. So let's say it's $5 for a package, and then because of the shortage, it shoots up to, let's just say $20, extreme example. Well, people begin at some point to do the math, and they say to themselves, well, wait a minute, if I buy a year's worth, and then this shortage is over in 2 months, I've wasted a hell of a lot of money because the price is going to go back down. And I bought high whenever, if I hadn't bought in bulk like that, I just a couple months down the road would be back to buying low. So now I have a year's worth of $20 packages of toilet paper that are actually only worth $5. The positive result of price increases during some sort of shortage is it is a deterrent against people buying up tons and tons of it, because there becomes a financial liability, if you will. There's a financial play in it that you could end up losing money if you buy too much. And so the upside then is that, yes, everyone may be paying a bit more for toilet paper in the short term, or however long the situation is, but at least everyone has access to it. And I think that's important to understand, that because again, especially elected officials, depending on their position at time, in a time of a situation like that, they love to blame. Democrats especially run around price gouging, price gouging, price gouging. They're just trying to take advantage of people. All right, fine, leave the price the same. And then the first 5 people in line gobble everything up, unless, are we going to start rationing? I mean, we're going to go full-blown, broken down society, communism, Marxism? Because that's a whole nother story, a whole nother level of hell. Recognizing that the reason prices increase during shortages is important, because it's not some price gouging scenario. And listen, that's not even to say that there aren't times people are like, I'm going to take advantage of this situation. I'm going to, we got hurricanes, and we got water levels high. Water isn't clean. It's in short supply. I got bottled water. I'm going to sell it for $100 a case instead of 10. The benefits still exist, even if the greed is the driving reason behind it. Is it diminishes the likelihood of the very few buying up as much as they possibly can and want, and instead keeps things more of a level playing field in terms of the purchasing of those items. Okay, that's just reality. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty, all of your home buying needs, your home selling needs. She is there for you. It's like having your own personal assistant. It's like probably what it is like to, be one of these uber left-wing, really rich people like Oprah or Taylor Swift, that you have people completely take care of all of this stuff for you. You're trying to sell your home, and there are some conditions that need to be met. The buyer did an inspection, and then you got to fix this and that. And you think, I don't know who to go to for pest control. I don't know termite damage, but you don't have to worry about it if you're uber wealthy, because you have an assistant, somebody that takes care of it for you. Well, that's what Emily Johnson does. She's not just there to show you homes or to let people in your house. She is there in order to help you navigate through all of those things that you and I probably aren't used to. She excuse me, has all of those connections. She knows the people, which makes it a lot easier for her, which in turn makes it easier on you. All of your home buying needs, your home selling needs, Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. Rufus, welcome to the show.
Hey, I didn't want to say I'm not too much excited about this strike out there. I have nothing by house that's brought in by a ship. Nothing. Everything is made here in America. And wait a minute. I got a phone here might be made in China.
Yeah, I suspect there's a lot more than you think.
No,
Well, even
that's about it. That's about it.
you have any fruits, or you grow all your fruits and vegetables, all of your food, bananas? You grow your bananas?
No, because I know.
I think there are a lot of people that are going to be surprised to learn about the origins of the products that they own. Bananas is one of them. When you think about it, you're like, oh, yeah, I guess that does make sense. Things that we just don't even think about that are going to be impacted by this. And, incidentally, this sort of situation is an argument for utilizing tariffs in order to make us less reliant on products and goods from other countries. Now, there are some products that we have no choice. Just because of our country, our climate, we don't have the ability to necessarily grow certain produce here. Although I suppose with advancing technologies and the ability to build infrastructures in which you could do it inside, but just to the capacity that other countries are able to, some of it, if we do want it, it's going to be exported. But we're talking billions of dollars a day. So while there may be some Americans that live completely 100% off any sort of grid that is reliant on products from outside the country, the vast majority of us don't. And you may even think it. This is one of the things Sarah mentioned they're going to be talking about on the show, A1 Custom Car Care on Saturday, because, a lot of the parts in your vehicle, they go out, it comes from another country. I know one of the big box stores in particular here, in which they sell auto parts, rely heavily on China. And so getting your car fixed, there are a lot of companies that are massively American made, but there may be just like one component, and it's because there just is nowhere in the United States that makes the component. So everything that is possibly American made are components within whatever the product is, but there's one that they just don't have any choice. And so I think that people oftentimes, even if they make a point to buy only American, are going to be surprised when they find out that potentially their lives get disrupted with this. I wanted to, although out of time here, I just think that we'll get this story posted. Congressional candidate goes viral after posing for happy family pics with his friend's wife and kids. a congressional candidate in Virginia. He's a Republican, gone viral after sharing what appears to be happy family photos, but with him posing with a friend's wife and 3 kids. Derek Anderson, former Army Green Beret, running for an open seat in Virginia's 7th District, posted a campaign video with a shot of him beaming alongside a woman and 3 girls, along with another image of them at a dining table as if they're eating together as a family. However, the Republican candidate has no kids. He did recently get engaged, but not to the woman in the photo. In fact, he lives alone with his dog, according to his campaign website. The newly engaged candidate blasted the suggestion that he was trying to portray them as his own family, noting that, well, people who are running for office take pictures with lots of people, but it's very, very clear he's wanting them to appear as if they are his family. News coming up. Glenn Beck as well. I'm Nick Reed.